Moving on, we got Warhorse Trainer. Your Silverhand recruits have +1 attack. So after looking at the how do I put this? I'm going to talk about Inspire basically because it matters a lot for Paladin. I feel like the aggressive decks are going to be a lot more efficient moving forward. They're always going to have a good curve. You're never going to get those games where they skip a drop anymore because there's so many new options to just make sure your curve is perfectly filled out. So where does that put control decks, which is what Paladin's going to be, because there's like one card for aggro Paladin in this set. Basically, I think Paladin is going to move into the Inspire direction, even though it has a couple of really strong Joust cards. So every aggressive deck is going to have this really good early game curve, like I mentioned, which means that the control decks also need to have an early game curve to keep up with it. The days of like just drawing a Fiery War Axe in your warrior opening hand and having that be good enough to keep up with the aggressive decks, those days are over. It's not enough anymore. Your control deck needs to be matching every drop of the aggro deck. And if you're playing expensive crap in your deck to win jousts, like Mysterious Challenger and Tuskar Jousters and all this stuff, it's actually going to be too inconsistent. And if you get the hand, I'm sure you've all had it, where you have like 2 5-mana cards and a 6-mana card, and it's early and you just don't have a good play on turn 3, you're just dead. Like, that's how snowbally it's going to be. You just lost the game. So Warhorse Trainer might be very important for the way that control decks will be built, which, in my opinion, for a class like Paladin, will be centered around the Inspire mechanic. Now, the Inspire mechanic, it's like, the way people are evaluating it is like, they look at the cards that have Inspire, and then they add the 2 mana to the cost, and they're like, oh, this is kind of the effect you get, that's kind of underwhelming, this is decent. That's not actually like what Inspire is. Inspire is the first, it's called a mana sink from Magic. It's like the first mana sink that's incorporated into Hearthstone. So what is a mana sink? It's like, there are cards in Magic like Fireball, the Magic version of Fireball, which has like a variable casting cost. So if you have 1,000,000 mana crystals, you can actually utilize all of them late in the game and fuck your opponent. But in Hearthstone, you don't really have variable casting costs. What you do have are hero powers to kind of help you always have stuff to do. And with the Inspire mechanic, I feel like, especially in the case of, let me pull up the neutral cards that I get the name of it right. In the case of like Garrison Commander, I actually think this card will be the neutral 2-mana 2/3. I think it might be a core part of control decks. Because, like I said, the aggressive decks are going to have this early game like good curve every time. So your control deck also needs to have a low curve so that you can consistently match their curve and then win in the late game. So how do you do that? You need cards that are playable early but still good late game. So something like Garrison Commander, I can play it turn 2 to match my opponent's Knife Juggler and trade off, but then late in the game with my Paladin deck, I draw this on like turn 6. I play it, I get 2 activations, and all of a sudden my 2 drops are doing more for my control deck than the aggro deck's 2 drops are doing. Because the aggressive decks aren't going to want to Inspire. They don't want to waste mana using their hero power. Inspire very much encourages like the slower controlling decks. So I feel like Garrison Commander will kind of be like the, maybe I might be completely wrong about this, and this might just be too weak of a strategy, but I feel like the Garrison Commander thing might be how like Warrior and Paladin are built, maybe even Priest, because they're so strong, especially with Justicar Trueheart. It's just like, I think that control Paladin decks, what I'm saying overall, is there will be very low curve to take advantage of the Inspire mechanic in the late game, rather than being these control decks that we've seen up to this point, which basically just play cards to slow the game down and then drop big stuff like Ysera. I don't think you can afford to do that crap anymore. I think that you have to, like Garrison Commander, I guess. And the advantage here is you can have those faster curves and kind of punish slower decks on top of that. Now, if you build a mid-rangey Paladin deck like this, with the whole Inspire into the late game type of thing, that does mean you're going to have a bad time against decks that are just slightly slower than yours. but those decks are going to be absolutely punished by every aggressive deck so hard that I don't think it's a huge deal. I feel like those kinds of mid-range decks that take advantage of the Inspire mechanic, those are kind of what are going to take over. And the Joust mechanic, as cool as it is, as much as it encourages you to play expensive minions, it's too inconsistent, and you don't want to play expensive minions because then you will draw them, and you don't want to draw them. So yeah. Anyway, Warhorse Trainer, the card that I had this whole rant about. If the games play out like this, where you have 1 million tokens being generated, Warhorse Trainer is a really strong card. It's like another type of Quartermaster effect. It's not as good, but it's fine. The stats on it are passable. It's a reasonable 3-drop. I think that it probably just won't see that much play, but it's like, well, it's hard to say, right? Because if you draw it with Muster, it's nuts. When you compare it to Direwolf Alpha, the effect is pretty much the same. The only difference is on this card, the stats are better. You cost 1 more, you get 2 more health. You also can't buff your mini-bots and stuff. I don't think a Direwolf Alpha type of effect is something that your control deck is going to want, so I will most likely say that Warhorse Trainer won't see play because of how competitive the slots are going to be. But it's definitely not terrible because, once again, Inspire is going to be popular for a class like Paladin, in my opinion. Alright, moving on, we got Mysterious Challenger, 6 mana, 6/6. Put 1 of each secret from your deck into the battlefield. I feel like this card is pretty bad. I mean, well, man, that's tough to say. I guess if you want to make it good, you would be playing a large variety of secrets. The problem with the Paladin secrets is that so many of them do nothing. Like, you can't really put eye for an eye into your deck. You have to be really selective with the playable secrets, and a lot of them don't encourage playing a slow type of play style. A lot of the Paladin secrets that are the best are very aggressive, like Avenge or the new Paladin secret, Competitive Spirit. So, because of that, I don't expect this to see much play, because again, it's a 6 mana 6/6. Stats on that kind of card are something you would put into a control deck, but you don't want to play those Paladin secrets in a control deck, so I don't think Mysterious Challenger will be played at all. Moving forward, we got Murloc Knight. See, this is a card, the first time I read it, I was really impressed. This is the kind of thing that I think would kind of win the late game for the Paladin control decks, honestly. I think it might, in a slow Paladin deck, it might be better than Piloted Shredder, and I don't say that lightly. Murloc Knight, people look at it like, oh, it's a Murloc, I'm going to build my Murloc Paladin deck, but you can just ignore all that and just look at the actual like stats on it. Every turn it lives, you hero power into like, let's say like a 2/2 on average or something. I don't know what the actual stats are, probably even a little better than a 2/2. So you hero power, you get a 1/1, a 2/2, and this 3/4 that's still threatening to continue wrecking them. If you draw this in the late game with your neutral 2-mana guy, the Garrison Commander or whatever it is, Garrison Commander, then it really will just win games for you on its own. I think it's a very strong 4-drop, like very, very strong. And it does give you a chance of just destroying them. You're going to get those games where you roll the like old Merc guy or the Murloc War Leader guy. So yeah, I think Murloc Knight is very strong, actually, and I definitely want to test out some Inspire-based control decks using him for sure. Moving on, we got Enter the Coliseum, destroy all minions except each player's highest attack minion. This card really encourages the humility type of gameplay for Control Paladin, where you get him down to just having one big minion, and then you play like Humility on it, or Aldor the Peacekeeper, or Aedric the Pure, and that's how you deal with their big stuff. So I think it's too inefficient. Pretty much, it's just there's been cards like this in Magic that have pretty much just been awful, and they cost like 4 mana, so I don't expect this to ever see play. But it's definitely interesting, just as an option for Paladin. I feel like if it cost 5, it would be a slightly different story, but the fact that it costs 6 means that if I want to combo this with Aldor Peacekeeper or Big Game Hunter, it's going to cost me 9 mana, and I think it's just way too slow. Like, I want my AoE cards to be good against aggressive decks, and this is just a little too slow to do that, I think. Moving on, we got Seal of Champions. Give a minion 3 attack and Divine Shield. How much better is this than Wolf Rider? By the way, I'm kind of just giving my impression like the first time. I haven't like sat down and thought about these cards too much. I'm just kind of saying what comes to mind. Seal of Champions, I'm pretty sure it's bad. Like, maybe in an aggressive Paladin, I'm thinking. You wouldn't play it in a control deck for sure. If you play it in the aggressive list, like, is it better than the new 2/1 charge neutral with Divine Shield? I don't think so. I feel like this is like an interesting buff effect, and you can use it on the new 3 mana legendary sister cards, probably to decent effect. But it already gives Divine Shield. It's not like any better on the one that already gets Divine Shield from being targeted. So yeah, the point is, I don't think Seal Champions will see too much play. Yeah, something like Wolf Rider is just like better off the top probably if you've already lost control of the board. Speaking of aggressive Paladin though, Competitive Spirit's the last Paladin card revealed, and this is a very good one in my opinion for aggro Paladin. I mean, for 1 mana, you can get like 2/2 or 3/3 worth of stats off of it, depending on how many minions you have in play. And this gets your stuff out of the range of AoE effects very well. It's a very consistent Paladin card. They're not really going to play around it. If I play 2 of these and like 1 Avenge in my Paladin deck, maybe that's enough to where I can play Mad Scientist too. Mad Scientist has always been like almost good enough to play in Paladin, but the fact that it gets you a 1 mana card is like very different than getting you a 3 mana card. Like in Mage, Mad Scientist is disgusting because you're pulling 3 mana cards. But when you're getting 1 mana cards, it's like a lot less impactful. So I don't know if this is enough to get Mad Scientist to see play in aggro Paladin, but it's definitely getting close. And I think it's good enough to just play 2 of it on its own. It's cool that you can just kind of like plop it on the table and then Divine Favor off. So yeah, I think this is a reasonable card for sure. Alright, so moving on to Priest, we got Spawn of Shadows. Inspire, deal 4 damage to each hero. 4 mana 5/4s, terrible stats. It's actually good against the new 4 mana 3/5s, but I don't think too many of them will see play in Constructed. It is weak to Despite, True Silver Champion, Piloted Shredder, which are super common. Weak to Flame Cannon as well. On top of that, even if it lives, yeah, the idea is that you use your hero power on yourself so that you're kind of, the trade favors you in the long run, but it's a card that's just almost never going to live more than 1 turn. If it does, you're threatening to deal 8 with it though, which is a ton of damage, I guess. It's kind of like drawing a Mind Blast with every Inspire and playing it. That might be really strong in some kind of weird lists, I don't know. It's just tough to burst with it, you know? Like the fact that I can only hero power once a turn is definitely an issue. Like, I don't think I want to play Garrison Commander in my Spawn of Shadows Priest deck, so I don't expect this to see much play, honestly. Confuse, I don't know if I've gone over this one yet. It's swap the attack and health of all minions. I don't think this will be that good, honestly. It's too unpredictable in what it does. You can put it in your own deck with Nerubian Eggs and stuff, but that's a lot of work for an effect that I don't see as being consistent or just good. The stars have to align for this card to be a blowout, and that's not the kind of card that you want to put into your deck, I think, most of the time. It does kill Doomsayers, I guess. All right, moving on to the Priest Legendary, we got Confessor Palatrus. Summon a random legendary minion with every Inspire. So, too slow. Like again, it's a 5/4 for 7, which means that if you play it for 7, it will die. So that means it's a 9-drop. You cannot be playing 9 mana crap anymore. It's just not how Hearthstone works. I don't care how much she helps you win Joust or anything. It's just not something you want to be putting in your deck. It's too slow against aggressive decks. It's too vulnerable and inconsistent against controlling decks. I guess the kind of cool thing is if you play it for 9 against a control deck, you get your big minion, and if it's actually one of the ones that don't suck, like let's say you get Ragnaros or Dr. Boom or I don't know, KT or something, then your opponent has two threats that they have to kill. Like, they have to kill Confessor, but they also have to kill the other guy. So I guess sometimes they won't have enough removal spells to kill both of them. So it's kind of interesting. But the fact she dies to a weapon is definitely a big problem. Like, the decks she's best against are other priests that can mind control her in the next turn. And, like, well, I guess it's not that good. She's like at her best against Paladin and Warrior, which both have the 4 damage weapons. Alright. So, moving on to Flash Heal, we got 1 mana, restore 5 health. Oh, it's interesting. You can use it to heal your... You can use it to heal your minions, right? Yeah, it's the ones that say restore 5 health to your hero that don't give you the option. So that's cool. I mean, obviously the Alchemy synergy is something people are going to bring up. I don't know how consistently you want an effect like this, but I feel like most games of Priest you can expect to get an Alchemy out if you play 2 of them. So I guess if you're okay with holding on to it until that point, it gives you a lot of upfront damage for 1 mana. You know what? It could be very strong, honestly. In an Alchemy-based deck, I could see this doing a lot of work. The fact that it's not dead without Alchemy is a very big deal, too. Later in the game, it's going to do a lot for you against more... Well, it's going to do a lot for you against decks like Face Hunter, but that's about it. And against Mage, I guess. Could be pretty strong. Well, we'll see if it's good enough. I don't know. Like, I don't think... Like, Holy Light doesn't really see play for Paladin, so I don't think this would see much play. But Akanai Soul Priest might change that and actually make it a staple. So until I see like what the Priest decks will look like, I'm not sure. Personally, I expect the Priest decks to all be dragon-based, or mostly be dragon-based, because of Wormrest Agent, which is the next card I'm going to go over. 2 mana, 1/4, Battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, gain +1 attack and taunt. So this is the card that Priest needed for a long-ass time, just to have a 2-drop that doesn't suck. And man, this card is awesome. This is a 2 mana, 2/4, which are amazing stats. Amazing, especially for Priests that can heal. And it really, like late game, it still gives you the taunt effect on a huge body. So without the taunt, you're still getting like Armor Smith worth of stats. So it's not like the best, but it's still fine because it's going to be killing Leper Gnomes, Paladin tokens, that kind of stuff. Wormrest Agent is amazing. Like, this is the kind of card that slows down aggro decks a lot. I expect this to make Flame Cannon a much better card. I expect that because of Wormrest Agent, not because of the 7 mana dragons or any of that crap, but because of this card, Dragon Priest will be a thing. Like, this is an amazing creature. And I will definitely be trying Dragon Priest just because of this card. Moving on, we got Shadow Fiend. Whenever you draw a card, reduce its cost by 1. So, for a while, I kind of struggled to know how much value to put on that kind of effect. Like, Emperor Thorson is obviously insane, but he's giving you that effect on way more cards. And you also have information about which cards you're going to be reducing the cost of when you play Emperor, because you know what you're going to have in hand. With Shadow Fiend, it's very random. Like, you don't know what you're going to draw. So, I feel like... when I thought about it more, I realized that it's kind of similar to the new Rogue card, Cut Purse, which is a creature that draws you coins once in a while. And this is actually worse than getting a coin, because a coin gives you that 1 mana reduction on any card in your hand of your choice, whereas Shadow Fiend is like only having that effect on some random card you draw off the top. So what that means is if it lives for a turn, it probably still wasn't good enough. It probably has to live like 2 turns to be good, unless you play at the turn that you draw a lot of cards, which is going to involve a lot of shit in play, Northshire and Circle of Healing. And those are things that definitely could happen, but I think it's going to be inconsistent enough that it just won't be that good. Like, the games where you draw a million cards off of Northshire Circle, do you really need help with Shadow Fiend to win those games? Probably not. I usually win those games as Priest anyway. So I don't expect this to see much play at all. Alright, moving on, we have Power Word Glory. Choose a minion whenever it attacks, restore 4 health to your hero. It's kind of like Blessing of Wisdom, I guess. You can play it on your own minion, you can play it on theirs to slow them down. If there's a hyper-controlling, like slow priest deck, I guess this could have a lot of flexibility. I really wish Priest would stop getting weird crap like this. Like, I don't know how to evaluate these cards. They're all situational. So if you have a minion, let's say they have a minion, right, and you're getting beaten down by it. If you put Power Word Glory on it, they'll basically stop attacking with it for a time. So it's kind of like a 1-mana removal spell. But if it's like Knife Juggler, it's still getting its effect going off. Or like any creature that does stuff every turn. And on top of that, the second you play a minion of your own, then they're going to attack. They're just going to say, have the 4 life, that's fine, and they're going to kill your minion. So it kind of slows the game down, but in the end, it gives them the value out of their creature in exchange for very little. So it's kind of like a 1-mana gain 4, but you can only target your face. You can't target their minions off of like Buccaneer or anything. So it's kind of a very situational heal card, and I don't think this will see play, but I might be completely wrong. Like, if the aggressive decks are like Mech Shaman, it's actually has a lot of potential. I mean, you can play it against something like Totem Golem. The interesting thing is it costs 1 mana, right? So you're going to play it early in the game. So if I play like Totem Golem, for example, and then they play Power Word Glory, I'll just attack them. And then what's going to happen is they're going to gain 4 life because the trigger will happen, and then they'll take the 3 damage. So you still have to eat 1 hit off of their minion and go to 27. So, like, for all those little reasons, I just don't think it's good enough. Moving on to Convert, it says put a copy of an enemy minion into your hand. Let's see. I don't think this is good. Whatever minion they have in play, they most likely would have played on curve. So for you to convert it, let's say I'm playing Convert like turn 5 after they have a Piloted Shredder. That means that my Piloted Shredder is getting played on something like turn 6, which is just not great because you're playing your minions off curve. You're wasting 2 mana to get that card into your hand. Like, I'm basically playing a 6-mana Piloted Shredder if that's what I'm copying. So I feel like Convert most likely won't see play, but the power that this card has is in its flexibility. Basically, you can, if they have multiple minions in play, which is, if that's ever the case, you're probably dead next turn. But if they have multiple minions in play, this lets you convert certain tech cards sometimes. Like, you can convert their Big Game Hunter and kill their other guy, and then they can play around your Convert if it's a card that's common and actually good. I don't expect these things to be the case, really. But you never know. We'll see. So moving on to Rogue, we've got Undercity Valiant, which is a 2-mana 3/2, and it's a combo deal 1 damage. So I guess with Rogue, you don't usually value 2-mana cards too highly because using your hero power is usually the best early in the game on turn 2. Because early game is when you're going to see 1 health minions that actually die to the Rogue hero power. So Undercity Valiant most likely won't get played as like a Bloodfin Raptor early in the game. You're playing it for its mid-game value, which is something. I mean, being able to deal 1 damage and target anything is pretty flexible with Rogue because you can combine that with your hero power and kill a lot of stuff. At a certain point, you play too many combo cards, and then you're put in these weird situations where like you have to play your Eviscerate without full value to combo your other card, and that's definitely something that might come up. But I see this as like a very good arena card. I don't think it'll see too much Rogue play, but to be honest, I have no idea what the Rogue lists are going to look like after this set is released. Rogue was really struggling, and it got some crap in this set. I mean, Rogue got so little compared to other classes. It's crazy how much Blizzard doesn't seem to like them. Priest got like a niche dragon deck that might be very good, but like even Priest didn't get much. So I feel like they didn't give the weak classes, aside from Shaman, too many good tools, which I'm very disappointed about, honestly, from Blizzard. I wish that Rogue just got like a good card in this set. Anyway, Undercity Valiant, is it good? It's definitely good in Arena. It's fine and constructed, but the slots are so competitive that I don't know if it'll be good enough. The fact that it's not a pirate seems to hurt, considering the newer cards. Alright, moving on, we got Cut Purse. Whenever this minion attacks the enemy hero, put a coin into your hand. So they have to not have a removal spell. 2 health is a lot more dangerous than it used to be because they added a lot of shocks to the set. As in the new Druid 1 mana card that can deal 2 damage. They also added like the Mage card that can deal 2 damage and gains bonus spell power. That might see play. So on top of that, you need to have like killed all their stuff, which Rogue can usually do. If you get to attack with it once, you can probably attack with it a second time, which is very interesting. Like, it's a card that has the potential to be very snowbally. The thing that's off-putting to me about Cut Purse is that, what if I just draw it late game? It's just pretty weak. The cool thing is it's cheap, and you can use it to combo, but you need to play a lot of card draw to support cheap cards like this that put coins in your hand, you know? If I draw a bunch of coins, I need to have something like a sprint, or else I'm just going to run out of stuff to play very quickly. So, yeah, because coins just encourage you to empty your hand. So, we'll see about Cut Purse if combo is a key part of what the newer Rogue decks are trying to do, and you're trying to play like Undercity Valiant and stuff, which I don't think will be the case. But if that's what's happening, Cut Purse is probably pretty strong. It's interesting though. Like, I haven't seen a 2-drop like this before. It might be very strong for all I know. Really have to play with it to see. Moving on, we have Beneath the Grounds. Shuffle 3 ambushes into your opponent's deck. When drawn, you summon a 4/4 Nerubian. So to get a 3-mana 4/4 is not too difficult. You can play like Ogre Brute, for example. You can get like Spider Tank, which is almost the same. It kills pretty much the same stuff. The thing about Beneath the Grounds is it's going to take you a very, very, very long time to actually get your 4/4s. I think it's just too inconsistent. The cool thing about this card is I actually think Richard Garfield designed it, I think was his name. The guy who designed Magic, like the game originally, is a brilliant game designer, and I remember reading somewhere that he came up with these Parasite type cards that shuffled into your opponent's deck, and then like stuff happened when your opponent drew them. And it seems like Blizzard kind of has used that mechanic with like Iron Juggernaut. They're using it again here with Beneath the Ground. So props to Richard Garfield. Man, I really hope I'm getting the name right. Otherwise, I'm going to sound stupid. Yeah, props to him though for making great card games, making Magic as well, and making Beneath the Grounds. So, Buccaneer, whenever you equip a weapon, give it +1 attack. Very interesting card. I feel like the fact that it's a pirate might be a bigger deal than most people give it credit for. Like, pirates have been pushed kind of hard in the new set. Not too hard, but like they have a lot of new tools. At a certain point, the pirate deck will be playable. Personally, I got Legendary playing Pirate Rogue. It was like my own list. Like 2 months ago, it was kind of a different one. It was like Oil Rogue basically, but I replaced a lot of the stuff with like Ship's Cannon, South Sea Deckhand, but it was still and Dread Corsair. So it was like still very much a traditional Oil Rogue deck, but then you played the Pirate synergy, and Ship's Cannon in particular was a sick card. That's something that Pirates really need more of, I think, to be a really strong class. But the question is, would I play Buccaneer in that Ship's Cannon type of like rogue pirate thing? Whenever you equip a weapon, give it +1 attack. I don't think I would. I mean, it's good for like enabling combo. In order to guarantee that you get value out of it, you have to commit 3 mana towards getting your Buccaneer weapon. I don't think it's good enough, but I might be wrong. This is not what Rogue wants to do turn 1, I think, most of the time. Alright, moving on, we got Shady Dealer. Battlecry, if you have a pirate, game +1/+1. 3 mana 4/3 is fine. The fact that Shady Dealer is not a pirate himself is definitely a problem. If you do get the 5/4, it's like good, but what pirate are you playing turn 2? It's really only Bloodsail, of course, well, whatever, the 2/3. That's like the only pirate you're playing turn 2. You don't really... it's tough to say. Like, you don't really play your South Sea Captain, like the Pirate Lord, doesn't usually make it into the Pirate decks. He's just not good enough. You're not going to play like the Acidic Ooze Pirate. You're not going to play South Sea Deckhand before turn 3. So in order to get value out of it, I think you do have to play South Sea, but I think you have to play it turn 4. And maybe in that kind of deck, it's actually good enough. But a 3-mana 5/4, while it's strong, like I said, 4 health is really dangerous. It dies to a lot of stuff. Really, you're just getting a 1-mana discount on a Lost Tall Strider. So, yeah, I don't think this will be good enough to make Pirate Rogue a thing, nor do I think the 1-mana Pirate is good enough to make Pirate Rogue a thing. And outside of a Pirate deck, I don't think they're good enough. Alright, so moving on to Shaman. We got Charged Hammer, which is a 4-mana 2/4 Death Rattle. Your hero power becomes deal 2 damage. So yeah, it's a crazy hero power, but only really early game. If you think about any time you've had an Alkanai Soul Priest out as a priest deck, yes, it's good, but it's a lot of times you're like shooting them in the face for 2 because it's all you can really do with it. It's not that much better on turn 8 than making a totem, is what I'm getting at. So Charged Hammer is interesting. You can play another weapon on top of it. So I can play Charged Hammer turn 4, turn 5 I can play Doom Hammer. And you get that Death Rattle right away. So you can get the Death Rattle earlier, but if you're grinding out the durability on this and poking them for 2, I don't know if it'll be good enough as a card, honestly. It's close. It's really close. This is definitely something that could have a ton of potential. I see Shaman as being something very fast moving forward. And maybe this is the new 4-drop for aggressive Shaman decks, like Mech Shaman or something. It definitely might be. It is technically 8 damage, which turns into direct damage. And it punishes things like Harrison Jones and Acidic Ooze. You don't want to ooze this card, so we'll see. I think it's much better in aggressive Shaman decks than controlling ones, but I also think that totems are very key to a successful Shaman deck, and the fact that you get that hero power to deal 2 is great for an aggressive list, but not that big of a deal for most other types of Shaman decks, because you're going to miss the totems that you can make. Moving on, we've got the Mistcaller. Not just a Mistcaller, this is the Mistcaller. 6 mana 4/4, battle cry, give all your minions in your hand and deck +1/+1. I have no idea how to evaluate this card. My impression is that it's very good, but until I actually see how big of a difference those stat boosts make, it's tough for me to evaluate how good it is. I know that the first 2 minions you play, you're kind of breaking even on, because it's a 6 mana 4/4, so you're kind of missing 2/2 worth of stats. So the upfront minion is like pretty bad, because it doesn't do anything after it's in play. They're not forced to kill it, and it is slow, but it's still very strong looking. I mean, this is, from what I heard, this is what Emperor Thorson did when the card was first designed. I think Max McCall designed it, Emperor Thorson, that is. And originally, Emperor Thorson reduced the cost of all the cards in your deck as well as your hand. And that lasted about a game or 2, and then they fixed that quick. But, yeah, Mistcaller is cool. I'm glad that they took that kind of effect and moved it onto a card, because it is very cool, changing all the cards in your deck. I don't know if it'll be good enough, honestly. Like, the metagame will be so fast, but it still seems strong. I don't know. I'll play it. It's definitely better in the mid-range lists, I think, than the control lists, and it's better in the mid-range lists than the hyper-aggressive lists, although it might still be good in the hyper-aggressive ones. Alright, moving forward, we got Elemental Destruction, which is a 3 mana, deal 4 to 5 damage to all minions, overload 5. There are so many good overload cards in the new set that I feel like you might be able to make like a dedicated Lava Shock deck. The question is, how good is that deck when you don't draw Lava Shock? I don't know. 4 to 5 damage to all minions is not a good deal for overload 5. Like, without Lava Shock, this effect is awful, like beyond awful. If you think about dealing 4 to 5 damage to just their stuff, that would be worth like 7 mana. It's like Flame Strike. But with the overload, you're paying 8, and you're hitting all your own shit. So, yes, you can't print a Flame Strike for 3 mana with overload 5. I think that would be too good, because you would just have stuff, and then you would make them stop having stuff when you flame strike them on turn 3 or 4, and then you wreck them. But the fact that it's symmetrical means you can't put it in aggressive decks. It's not good at slowing the game down because like you play it, your opponent's still going to have initiative because you're overloaded. So if you have the lava shock, it's a very different story. But it's like, what are you going to lava shock? You're going to lava shock their face because you just killed all their stuff. So that's awkward. You have to play this 2-mana like Sinister Strike in your deck just to make your sweeper not suck. I think it's just too much work for good AoE to be worth playing, and I would rather just try to get my own board control early with stuff like Totem Golem and Zombie Chows and all of that. And then if I lose the board, I think I'm just going to rely on Lightning Storm, not this crap. I think the Overload is just too prohibitive. Moving on, we got Healing Wave, which is a card that so many people were excited for because from what I've seen on Reddit, I don't think most people can count past 5. So the fact that there's a 2-digit number seems really impressive to them. I think this is pretty unplayable, honestly. I think Healing Wave doesn't do shit against aggro. It's like, there's a reason Healing Touch doesn't see play. There's a reason Vitality Totem doesn't see play, which is a better heal than this card. And the reason is that every aggro deck comes at you from very different angles. Face Hunter is really the only deck that more or less targets your life total directly, but even Face Hunter tries to fight for the board. So if you're using this against mid-range Hunter, it's not even a good card. If you lose the board and they have a high main, they don't give a fuck if you gain 14. They just hit you in the face and you're dead. Like they'll laugh at you. Okay, you spent 3 mana to buy another turn for my high main to hit you. It doesn't matter. Like, on top of that, how often are you actually going to gain the full 14? Like, what if I'm at 20 and they're threatening like 15 damage? Most decks that have board control can threaten about 20. So like, you're really only gaining 10 if you win the joust. It's like, no reason to play this over Healbot or Vitality Totem. This gives you no options in Shaman that Shaman didn't already have, because you already had good healing options after GVG. So I'm just pretty disappointed in the card. Savitz was talking about them printing a chain heal type of card for Shaman because it's an ability in World of Warcraft, apparently. He was talking about that like a year and a half ago, and they finally did it, and I'm just disappointed. I think Healing Wave is like just not good. It doesn't do what you want against aggressive decks. Like, I'd rather have a Totem Golem against an aggro deck. Moving on, we got Fist of Jiraxxus. Whenever you play or discard this, deal 4 damage to a random enemy. So they kind of ported the madness mechanic from Magic into Hearthstone. It's exciting. I mean, there are a couple of cards in this set that really encourage the whole discarding thing. This is probably the